Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 129, Once in a Blue Moon. The episode begins with Ash and the gang having arrived near Cherry Grove City, sitting on the outskirts by a nearby stream. Ash was currently polishing his Pokeballs, believing that he had to do so in order to become a Pokemon Master, as Pokemon Masters would always take care of their Pokeballs. When he got to the GS Ball, he began to cleanse it with extra care, knowing how important it was. Despite treating the GS Ball with immense care while it was in his hands, as Brock called him that lunch was ready, he immediately dropped his Pokeballs and left them by the river, super excited to eat. Due to Ash's negligence for his Pokeballs, before he's able to eat, a Quagsire then shows up, poking its head out of the water, having a clear interest in Ash's Pokeballs. Ash immediately runs up to the Quagsire and uses his Pokedex on it, wanting to find out what it was, and the Pokedex reveals that Quagsire makes its home in clean, fresh water lakes, and it's covered by a slippery layer of skin, making it extremely difficult to handle. Getting distracted by the Quagsire, Ash forgets to pick up his Pokeballs. Ash wasn't the only one to be distracted by Quagsire, though, as Misty was as well, due to wanting to capture it since it was a water Pokemon, and she found it extremely cute. She tries to send out her Staryu to help her catch it, but of course, Psyduck comes out instead. Psyduck refused to fight the Quagsire, though, taking a liking to it somehow, as it proceeded to simply stare at it in the water, to the point where a Butterfree flew by because they had been staring at each other for so long. Misty tried to order Psyduck to do something, but it wouldn't. Anyways, Quagsire was bored simply staring at Psyduck doing absolutely nothing, and it still wanted Ash's GS Ball, so it decided to take it for itself, grabbing it and swimming away. Ash and the gang panic, not wanting to lose the GS Ball, so they chased the Quagsire down a path that ran adjacent to the stream. But they weren't able to go fast enough due to how slippery Quagsire was, making it very easy for it to swim in the water. This led Ash to send out Squirtle, who tried to actually follow it along in the water, but when it tried to tackle it, it slipped off, once again due to how slippery Quagsire was. Squirtle doesn't give up though, and continues to swim after the Quagsire, and he's actually making good progress, almost catching up, until Quagsire uses his tail whip to whack him away. Squirtle still refuses to give up, hitting Quagsire on the back of the head with his water gun attack, causing the Quagsire to drop the GS Ball as it flies into the air. It's about to fall onto the ground, but thankfully, Pikachu catches it in his hands. Quagsire gets angry at Squirtle for knocking the GS Ball out of its grasp, so it fires a water gun of its own, leaving Squirtle to counter with its water gun, and the two water guns collide. With Quagsire distracted by Squirtle, Misty takes the opportunity to try and catch it again, but she's cut off by Officer Jenny, who rides in on her motorcycle. Brock runs up to her in excitement, trying to flirt with her as usual, but Officer Jenny angrily pushes him off, informing Ash and the gang that they were under arrest for violating the Quagsire preservation restrictions. Officer Jenny then arrests Ash and the gang, taking them back to the police station, where Ash decides to phone Professor Oak so that he can plead their innocence. Oak instantly apologizes when he picks up, stating how he should have told Ash and the gang about the Quagsire laws, as he knew that they would have to go through that town to get to their destination. Oak defends that Ash and the gang didn't know about the Quagsire laws to Officer Jenny, and this thankfully leads her to drop all the charges and free Ash and the gang from handcuffs. Officer Jenny then takes the opportunity to explain to Ash and the gang now why the Quagsire preservation laws were so important. It was because the Quagsire were very special to the people of Cherry Grove City because they helped identify the cleanest water in the area, since they only lived in the cleanest of water. So therefore, if any trainers tried to catch the Quagsire like Misty tried to do, then it could dwindle their population, and therefore Cherry Grove City wouldn't be able to identify clean sources of water as easily. Brock thanks Officer Jenny for dropping the charges, trying to flirt with her again, leading Misty to drag him off. As for Ash, he continued to talk to Professor Oak on the computer, questioning if he knew why the Quagsire seemed so interested in taking his GS Ball. Oak said he didn't know, and hung up, but Jenny revealed that the Quagsire probably took the GS Ball because the Quagsire were interested in round things. She then clarifies that the Quagsire really fucking likes round things, to the point where they had an event dedicated to it every year. Once a year, at the same time, the Quagsire come down from their usual home of Blue Moon Falls, and take any round object that they can find, and take it back to their home, and then the next morning, they immediately return with those same round items. Due to how miraculous it was that the Quagsire took something and then decided to bring it back the day after, the townspeople all viewed it as immensely good luck. They especially viewed the last person to get their item back as having good luck, as they determined that that must have meant that the item was the most special one to them, since it took the longest time to get back, and therefore was the hardest one for them to give up. Right as Jenny finished talking, the same Quagsire from earlier then suddenly jump-scared Ash and the gang as it showed up at the police station window, wanting the GS Ball. Ash immediately tucked it into his pocket, refusing to let it go, which caused the Quagsire to develop a sad look on its face, and eventually give up. With the Quagsire gone, and Ash and the gang free to go, they continue on their journey, finding a new place to stop and eat lunch, and on the way, they cross a bridge. They then spot yet another Quagsire, a different one this time, unscrewing something from the bridge, when suddenly, a second Quagsire, this one being the one from earlier, jumps up from the lake that the bridge was over, and tried to smile at Ash to convince him to give him the GS Ball, but when this failed, he decided to simply jump on Ash instead, trying to retrieve the GS Ball from his backpack. Ash sends out his Chikorita to help him get Quagsire off of him, and Chikorita does so instantly, without even waiting for any orders from Ash. It desperately used the leaf on her head as a sort of windmill, and knocked everyone over as a result, including the Quagsire. Chikorita then jumps into Ash's arms and begins licking him, leading Brock to believe that Chikorita had become overprotective of Ash and developed a crush on him. That's right, Pokemon and human relationships? No, just kidding, because Ash wasn't down for that shit. But Chikorita did have a crush on him, though. That'll be a recurring theme. Chikorita having a crush on Ash was further proved as the Quagsire then got back up after being knocked down and tried to steal Ash's GS Ball again, trying to tackle him, leading the Chikorita to use her windmill yet again to knock the Quagsire away. Unfortunately, in the process, the GS Ball had fallen out of Ash's backpack and landed in the water, leading the Quagsire to jump down after it and swim away with it, much to Ash's dismay. Ash then proceeds to chase after the Quagsire, but Chikorita grabs his leg, still being immensely attracted to him, and because of this, Ash falls to the ground. Man, if only Chikorita knew that it would have more of a chance if it stopped trying to grab Ash like that. Meanwhile, Team Rocket surprisingly wasn't spying on Ash and the gang for once, as they had lost track of where they were. This didn't mean that they were gonna stay out of their lives forever though, as James instantly got to work trying to find out where they were by looking at a map, thinking on where Ash and the gang could potentially be heading. While James is doing this, Jesse notices that Meowth had somehow acquired a round crystal ball and was heavily enamored by it, playing with it. Meowth reveals that he found the glass ball in an open field, and he found it along with a whole bunch of other items, but as he tried to explain what these items were, James cut him off, getting the idea to use the glass ball as a fortune-telling crystal ball to try and find out where Ash and the gang were located. He even dresses up into a fortune-teller outfit for the full effect. However, James isn't able to see Ash and the gang's location through the crystal ball. All he's able to see is a Quagsire, who had shown up to steal the crystal ball due to it being round. Meowth, simply annoyed at the fact that the Quagsire took his toy, doesn't do anything, as Jesse and James decide to send out their Pokemon to attack the Quagsire so they can save the crystal ball. However, before they're able to send out their Pokemon, 2 more Quagsire show up, and the 3 total Quagsire quickly steal Team Rocket's Pokeballs with their Pokemon still inside, also being attracted to them because they were round. Team Rocket then proceed to chase after the Quagsire to get their Pokeballs back, as Ash and the gang were doing the same to retrieve Ash's GS Ball. Ash and the gang and Team Rocket then eventually followed the Quagsire to the same bridge, although they didn't know it, as Team Rocket was on one far end of the bridge, and Ash and the gang were on the other far end. As Ash and the gang and Pikachu looked down from the bridge into the stream where the Quagsire were, they spotted that there were now 4 Quagsire, revealing that the Quagsire they were chasing and the Quagsire that Team Rocket were chasing had met up and were going to the same location, presumably their home, the Blue Moon Falls. As the Quagsire floated down the stream, they were then joined by 4 more different Quagsire as well, who all had a variety of other items in their hands. Ash and the gang follow all 8 of these Quagsire, hoping to get Ash's GS Ball back, and they eventually find themselves at a lake, filled with even more Quagsire, including the 8 that had just arrived there. Ash then notices the Quagsire that took his GS Ball go up onto a rock, and he determines that this was the perfect opportunity for him to catch it so he could get his GS Ball back. However, Misty and Brock then remind him of the Quagsire preservation laws, being that he couldn't catch any Quagsire, leading a disappointed Ash to just sit back and watch, making sure that the Quagsire wouldn't at least damage his Pokeball or some shit. As for Team Rocket, they had followed the Quagsire to this lake as well, and devised a plan to steal all of the Quagsire along with Pikachu, quickly sneaking off to go get their balloon before returning to the lake. While Team Rocket were gone, Ash and the gang noticed the Quagsire laying in the water looking up at the stars, waiting for something to happen. Whatever they were waiting for, though, didn't arrive before Team Rocket did, as they said their motto, revealing their plan to steal the Quagsire, as they detached a claw from their balloon, which captured one of the Quagsire, and dragged it up into the balloon's basket. However, before the claw could return to the basket fully, the Quagsire then managed to escape from the claw, since its body was so slippery. Team Rocket had a backup plan, though, their classic net, which they deployed from the bottom of the balloon, and it enveloped every single one of the Quagsire at once, including the one with Ash's GS Ball. Team Rocket were happy with having the Quagsire, and were about to leave, when Jessie then remembered that they also were planning to capture Pikachu, and they also didn't have their Pokeballs back yet. Jessie looked in the net, but couldn't see any Quagsire with their Pokeballs, so she then looked down onto the lake, and saw their Pokeballs in a pile of garbage. I don't know why the Quagsire threw them out. Maybe they were just disgusted by, like, Arbok and Victory Bell's smell or some shit. But anyways, Jessie was extremely angry at how their Pokeballs were treated, and immediately retrieved them with the claws, also using another claw to capture Pikachu. Team Rocket were finally ready to escape, but unfortunately for them, they weren't able to, as it was revealed that there were more Quagsire that they hadn't captured yet, who were simply just further down the lake, and they hadn't noticed them. All these uncaught Quagsire proceed to throw large stones at Team Rocket, which also breaks the claw that was pulling Pikachu up, setting him free as he falls into Ash's arms. Ash then sends out Bulbasaur to use Razor Leaf, which cuts the net, freeing the captured Quagsire, and then some of the uncaptured Quagsire throw even more stones at Team Rocket, which causes the balloon to have a hole popped in it, which sends Team Rocket blasting off. With all of the Quagsire free, they sense something from the sky as they look up at it, which leads them to swim with their items further upstream until they reach their home of Blue Moon Falls, with Ash and the gang following. When they arrive, they notice that what the Quagsire had been sensing in the sky was in fact a blue moon, hence why the place was called Blue Moon Falls. The Quagsire then used Water Gun to shoot all of the items up a waterfall in an attempt to see who could get their item the highest. Brock realizes that they were probably doing this as a way to pay respect to the blue moon, which they held in such high regard. So that would explain why they only took items at a specific time of year, as that must have been the time of year that the moon turned blue. Brock added that the Quagsire also likely viewed the Quagsire who was able to get their item the highest as a sort of leader of all the Quagsire, earning their respect due to how close it was able to get its item to the moon. That Quagsire this year happened to be the one with Ash's GS Ball, as it water gunned it up to the moon, and it got the highest out of any items, leading the Quagsire to cheer the Quagsire with the GS Ball on, in utter joy. With the Quagsire distracted by their joy, they let the GS Ball then return to the water and flow downstream, leading Ash and the gang to chase after it, not wanting to lose it. Unfortunately for them, they chased it all night long and still weren't able to catch up to it. Meanwhile, the next morning in Cherry Grove City, all of the town residents had gathered by the river, expecting all of their round items to show up downstream, like they usually did. And fortunately for them, they did, as they reclaimed their items. The GS Ball is the last of these items to arrive down the river, with Ash and the gang following shortly after, still having chased it into the morning. The GS Ball floats down to Officer Jenny, who was also waiting by the river, and she picks it up and immediately returns it to Ash and the gang, much to their delight, relieved that, although they were extremely tired, it was worth it, as they had reclaimed the GS Ball without anyone else stealing it. Ash then gets even happier, as Jenny reminds him that the person who claimed the last item to flow down the river would be blessed with immense luck, and since the GS Ball was the last item to flow down the river, Ash would be the one with that immense luck. Ash certainly hoped this was true, as he had pretty bad luck, especially for a protagonist.